Good Tuesday afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Seth Joyner Show. All you Eagles fans have got to be fired up about what you witnessed last Sunday. We're going to have some great debates tonight because there are some people that believe that the Eagles can run the table. Yes, that includes the Dallas Cowboys. And other people think that, they may get tripped up along the way. No matter what you believe or what you think, you've got to be impressed by what you've seen out of Nick Sirianni and what you've seen out of Jalen Hurts. They seem to have found the magic formula, if you will, and that is by running the football and putting this football team offensively in a position where they can actually be successful. On the defensive side of the ball, we saw a lot more aggression in the first half of the game. Was a little disappointed about how they looked in the second half because I believe on both sides of the ball, they pretty much just, they put it on cruise control once they went up. I believe it was 33-7. You can't do that in the NFL because all it takes is one or two turnovers. Next thing you know, you got a game on your hands all over again. In all your studying as a coach, to be a head coach in the NFL, you're watching what some of these other coaches do. Does Belichick ever take his foot off the gas? Does Sean Payton, if he were beating the Eagles the way the Eagles were beating his team last week, would he take his foot off the pedal? No, because these teams know that until that clock says 0-0-0, or you've got a lead that's so insurmountable that you've got to keep pressing on. I believe the coaches got passive, and in turn, the players got passive in the second half, and that game almost got away from them. The great debate is, what's going on with Jalen Hurts? He's breaking some records, and he's in some lofty, positions at this point in time in his career, but there still seems to be a faction of people who are not believers in one Jalen Hurts. Yes, he's getting a lot done on his feet, with his feet, I should say, and that can be dangerous. I just think that sometimes, they've tempted fate. I think when your quarterback has more carries, and I know that there are some pass plays where he scrambled that's mixed in there, but I think when your quarterback has more carry than your featured running back, then in some ways that's problematic. And they've got to figure out a way to balance that out. Big game coming up against the New York Giants next week. The former head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, who was the offensive coordinator for the New York Giants, was fired today. One Jason Garrett. I think the dominoes are starting to fall as far as that organization is concerned. But, the Eagles have got to stay focused and realize that the Giants are a team that they can beat. And if you guys watched that game last night, the Philadelphia Eagles, the staff, the fans, the media, everybody's got to be excited about the prospect of, what next week's game holds. Now, I'm going to introduce these two gentlemen, because, they do the work week to week, reporting on breaking news, keeping us up to date with what's going on. You guys know them both. I believe they got a podcast together. Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan will join me to break down what we saw in our Philadelphia Eagles last week and what we have to look forward to. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing this evening?
Great, Seth. Thanks for having us, man.
Doing well. Good to be here.
Okay, so I'm going to let you go first, Adam. Give me what's your impressions about what the Eagles did to the number one ranked rushing defense last week.
I was told Monday afternoon, Seth, I think it was early Monday afternoon, that they did some really unique things with their run game in terms of play calling, diversity, and how they did it. And I should probably want to watch the coaching tape later this week. And I was like, okay. So I just taught Geoff and I. What we do is we ping people around the league who advanced people in scouting that take a look at the opponent every week, and generally some people have Eagles as a scouting assignment. And everyone I've talked to this week says the same thing. He goes, no one ran a more diverse run game than the Eagles did this week. They did so many different things. And it's funny is because the head coach, Nick Sirianni, who calls the plays, complain about, oh, you can't do pre-snap motion, that you can't just do it to do it. Well, they're not doing it just to do it. They're getting the cause and effect of it. And I just love, Seth, to answer your question, I just love what Sirianni's doing. Sometimes as a coach, you have to swallow your pride. You have to, he can't. They're clearly a passing team. Okay, start the season through 5 weeks, top 5 in terms of pass attempts, somewhere around there per game. It wasn't working. So what do? You go to the plan B. You run the football. You take the ball out of the quarterback's hands. You make him feel more comfortable, and then you slowly ask him to do different things within the pass game because you've got a run game to support it. And it's just a beautiful marriage between the pass game and the run game. And I didn't see this coming. I don't think anyone did. I don't know if even Sirianni knew he'd be doing this, but he's doing it, and he's doing a great job. And I have to give him credit. Geoff and I have been very critical in our show Inside the Birds of him. Sometimes I thought it was a little bit too strong for me, but we go game by game with this thing. We just tell you what we see and what we're told. And the fact of the matter is he was not doing a very good job of helping his quarterback for a while. And now I think he gets it. I mean, it's a little bit too much of the run, but you know what? Until they stop it, keep doing it.
Well, before I pass it on to Geoff, I want to say I heard you made the comment at the beginning of the year. They were a passing football team. No, they were trying to be a passing football team that wasn't doing a very good job because, in my opinion, they made themselves, too one-dimensional for defenses by throwing the ball so much and being really predictable by formationally what they do. They even do it now. I mean, all the good runs that they have out of 12 and 13 personnel, and you guys are going to continue to hear me harp on this until I see the creativity and the innovation. With all the great running that they're doing out of their multiple tight end sets, I don't see the passing game that matches up to that and is there to be had. But yet and still, they run the ball out of big people. And when they want to throw it, they get back into shotgun again, which is a dead giveaway. So I just think that when you're playing a really good defense and a really good defense coordinator, which we thought the Saints were last week, that, that predictability is going to bite them in the behind. Geoff, your impressions of this Eagles team?
I'll marry what Adam said with what you said. I think specifically this thing started against the Raiders. Really, the idea that we're going to try to run the ball more. They did it the first series. Miles got hurt, then the game got out of hand. So it's really been something that's been 5 weeks in the making, not 4, but 4 where it's really worked and turned things around for them. I like conceptually the idea that against the Lions and then the Chargers, they came out downhill under center. It's almost like they understood how important it was to stabilize what they were doing. And that's a back to basics approach. We're going to use our big guys, use our running backs, take some responsibility off the quarterback. But then they didn't stay that way, as you just referred to. Now you're seeing them run again, but out of shotgun. You're seeing 12 and 13 personnel. You're seeing inside zone, outside zone. You're seeing pin pull sweeps. You're seeing quarterback design runs now that function off of what the conventional run game is doing. It's a little bit Ravens-like, which I find to be really interesting. And I'm looking for the next step, as you just mentioned, because Adam and I talk about this all the time. At some point, it would be naive to think that the Eagles are just going to be able to run 40 to 50 times a game for the rest of the year and win games like that. At some point, they will have to figure out a way to open up that passing game and get more people involved. And I thought, Seth, to your point, that what you would see was a little bit more of going back to the downhill running game so that you could work the play action off that with boots and, other quarterback movement type plays, and then be able to get your route concepts going on and get guys schemed open. Have not seen that. I agree with you. I think their passing game they are still looking for an answer to that. And if Devontae Smith or Dallas Goedert were to get hurt and miss a game, they're screwed. I don't care. I mean, you can run 80 times if you want. You're not going to win that game. So they have to figure out over these next 6 games a way to be able to get the ball to more people and really bring this offense to a completion where they are multifaceted and not just a heavy run team. I agree.
Well, Geoff, how do they get there? Because conventional wisdom would say, like, if I put on my offensive coordinator hat and I got my first 15, okay, as I go through my first 15, I'm either putting a check mark or a question mark by each player as I go down. Because what should be on my sheet is my first 15, and they all pretty much look like, they're in a different formational or personnel category. Okay. So as I go through my first 15 and I'm checking the ones that I've had success with it, now when I flip my sheet, I go to my sheet and I'm asking myself, okay, we've had success out of 13 personnel. Okay. We've got 3 different runs out of 13 personnel. Okay, so let me also figure out, what type of play passes that we have off of that. I look when they're in 13 and they've got the fastest guy on this football team in man-to-man situation in Quez Watkins. And I know, listen, he dropped the ball last week that he absolutely has to catch. But when they played against the Chargers, everybody was up at the line of scrimmage. The only guys that were off was the cornerback who was on Quez and the safety, the single high safety. And even he started cheating at times. And I'm watching this and I said to myself, you got a guy that runs 4.38 out there man to man. Why aren't you throwing him at least one go ball off of play action? Okay. To take it a step further, if you really want to stress the safety here, okay, you go play action, you cross Dallas Goedert from the 3 tight end side. That safety has the bite up on that. Now you got Quez on the post right behind it. I mean, listen, my thing is, if my mind can work that way, these guys are being coached at King's ransom as well as the players are being paid a King's ransom, to figure these types of things out. And you can create a lot of headaches for offenses when you start to coordinate your pass plays off of your run and your run plays off of your pass. Because I know as a former player, everything, when things look the same, it's confusing, especially when you have the ability to run the ball the way that they've been running it the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, a great question. You painted a good picture there. I think I would say, and Adam and I talk about this a lot, is that if you don't think you have receivers as a group, we know Devontae Smith can get open, but if you think you've got young receivers, unpolished receivers, then as a coaching staff, we feel like then you have to scheme ways to get them open more. You've got to help them out. You either have to come up with your plays for Quez Watkins or Jalen Reagor to get the ball in their hands close to the line of scrimmage and let those natural abilities come through. Or you've got to figure out a way within your scheme and your quarterback to make sure that the openings are there. And that a lot of time, if you watch a Kyle Shanahan coach team, he does that, right? With motion, with misdirection, with 3-by-1 formation or bunch formations. I don't know that this team right now is showing you an advanced formational kind of grouping to the point where the defense has to do a lot of guesswork as to what's going on. I think they're a little bit too predictable. We talked about that with Doug Peterson last year, especially. So I think what the Eagles have is a couple of receivers who are not natural X, natural Y, or slot. I mean, they can move around, but because they're not natural and they don't just like Keenan Allen go and get the ball, that's where it's, in my mind, it's on the coaches to figure out ways to present eye candy and formational variety to help them out more.
I believe that, but Adam, I can remember back in training camp when the media asked Nick Sirianni about where all of these different guys fit. Where does Hightower fit? Where does, Reagor fit? Where are you going to play them all? And his decision was to make them all interchangeable. I vividly remember that. And there's something to be said about that, but there's also something to be said about a young guy learning one position, X or Y or slot, and then you giving them just a little bit, you hand feeding them a little bit at a time. When I look at Jalen Reagor and Jalen Ramsey, they have no chemistry whatsoever. The few passes that he does try to get to him, the timing's off, the route's late, the ball's out late, they have nothing. And to Geoff's point, Adam, here you go. You've got, you know, you got Miles Sanders as your home run hitter. I don't care what anybody says. I know that Jordan Howard is an integral part of what they do. And he's an important part because he softens up the middle of the offense, the middle of the defense by running in between the guards. But Miles Sanders is that type of guy that every single time that he touches the ball, there's a chance that he could take it to the house. Dallas Goedert, a high impact type of player. He's a guy that if you get him in the right situation, he can run away from DBs. I don't know that you necessarily get that with Devontae Smith, although he's the best route running rookie I've seen in a long, long time. And then, you've got Quez Watkins, who has been somewhat of a hot head scratcher for me all year long, because a guy with that kind of talent, that kind of ability, that kind of speed, and I know for a fact that he can run more than just, your stretch routes. That's your post route, your corner route, and your goal routes. I know he can run more. Why aren't you getting some more of these guys involved? Because as the season goes on, yeah, you're playing against some pretty bad teams, but you got some pretty good coordinators out there too. They're going to figure out in the crucial situations, how do I take away from Jalen Hurts the couple of guys that he really, really wants?
Yeah, so Seth, what I would add just a couple things here. So when you look at the way that Sirianni structures this offense with his coaches, he doesn't believe in X and Z. He's like, we have either inside receivers or outside receivers. This is what you were referring to. And that's fine. He wants them to be interchangeable. But Greg Ward's not an outside receiver. He's just not. I think we all know that. Now, Quez Watkins, it's funny you bring him up. So I got the stat, which I put on our show last week, that the Saints are the worst team at covering the slot receiver in the National Football League. I'm like, well, it's funny. Quez Watkins, the Eagles see him as a vertical slot. The guy has one pass target. I understand they didn't throw the ball very much. They didn't have to. They threw it 24 times. But where is the vertical throw from there? I would have liked to have seen that if we're being a little critical in a game where they scored 40 points and took the pedal off the metal in the second half. Those are the kind of things I'd like to see. It's kind of what you're referring to. Use Quez Watkins a certain way where he can beat coverage. He's not the route runner. We understand that with Devontae Smith. The other thing they don't have is, by the way, is they don't have a physicality at the wide receiver position because Arcega-Whiteside, I know we got the 23-yard catch, but we know he's a blocking receiver. Their miss on him, he's their 6'2 receiver. They don't have a big receiver that could go get it. So they're a little bit limited. There's no doubt. But Goedert, who you mentioned, must be a bigger part. It's not just because he got this great extension. He must be a bigger part of it. And the other thing they can do with him, which they're not doing enough, but they did it with Zach Ertz, is line him up at the X position, at least line him up outside more. You're not stopping Dallas Goedert. He's too big, too strong, too athletic, too fast. So I like to. I know that they're only throwing the ball 23 to 27 times a game right now, but when there's an opportunity to use him a little bit differently, get him on a linebacker on the outside, let him win because this guy is really gifted.
Do you think that, as we look at Jalen Hurts, each one of you guys give me your opinion. Are they not running the football because of Jalen's inefficiencies? Because they're trying to protect him? I'm trying to figure it out because, we've talked all year long about, his inconsistencies, his arm strength, his accuracy, so on and so forth. But I think over the last three games, he's played a lot better and he's thrown the ball a lot better. He's missed a lot less, even though he's thrown a lot less than he had, early in the year. What's your take on Jalen? Because he's doing a lot of great things with his legs, like I said in my open, but we know that sooner or later he's going to have to win games using his arms, and they're going to have to put him in position, and they're going to have to entrust in him, to make the right moves. Now you go back, the week before last, I really loved the way that he manipulated the pocket, and you could see he made a concerted effort to stay in the pocket and manipulate, get up, get back, get side to side, to buy time, and that extra time really helped him, complete some balls. But I get the sense now that, we're in typical Philadelphia, we call for the run, we got the run, now we want the damn pass, But I want to see him progress. I want to see him progress as a quarterback, to be honest with you. I don't want to see him keep running the ball. It's like we get caught up in this thing all the time. When Donovan McNabb was here, he takes off too early. Then he almost, in my opinion, destroyed his career by trying to stay in the pocket too much and not utilizing the gifts that he had. I don't want to see that happen with Jalen, and I don't think he's wired that way, but I still think at some point he's got to get to a point where he can control the game. If he's going to be a franchise quarterback, he's got to learn how to control the game from the pocket and use all of those skills as secondary deals. Your thoughts?
Geoff?
I agree. Look, I mean, I think, there's some sensitivities about talking about Jalen Hurts that there shouldn't be. To say that they are running the ball more because A, it works, and B, because you don't want the quarterback right now throwing 25 or plus more times a game is completely fair. You know what? The Steelers ran the ball a whole lot. Ben Roethlisberger's first 3 or 4 years. Tom Brady, same thing. The Patriots ran, and they're doing it again with Mac Jones. It's actually very common for teams to want to run the ball more when they have a first-year quarterback. So that is not a knock on Jalen Hurts. But that being said, we know it's a passing league. We know that the organization wants to put together a dynamic offense, and there will be a time when this running game is just not clicking the way it is, and the quarterback will have to make better throws. I think that over the last few weeks, you've seen Jalen Hurts do a better job of staying in the pocket instead of leaving early. I think for the most part, when he misses a pass, he's not wildly inaccurate. Daniel Jones the other night threw it to a fat guy. I mean, he threw it to Steve McClendon. Like, you would have thought he was passing the ball to Steve McClendon. I haven't seen Jalen Hurts do that. But there's about 4 or 5 plays from that game against the Saints where I thought, where he showed his inexperience. I mean, he had a corner out to Dallas Goedert where the ball kind of went up and then down and fell about 5 yards short. There was the Miles Sanders opportunity there. He just saw it too late. Devontae Smith on the left sideline. He had a chance to hit him right at the 1 yard line, batted out. Right now, it's just a little bit, and you mentioned it with Rager. His timing and anticipation is not there yet. But guess what? That's the type of stuff that takes the longest, I think, to come together. What I'm really pleased with him is that when he does throw, again, he's a caretaker. He doesn't throw the ball to the other team a whole lot, which you see a lot of rookies or second-year quarterbacks do. And he's not wildly inaccurate. So to me, I think he has the tools, Seth, to be able to open up and improve. And he certainly has the aptitude, the want to, the desire. He has that. I think the bigger question is, does the organization itself have the patience and the belief in its running game and its defense, not just this year, but also next year, and then maybe even a year after, to let Jalen develop that way? Or do they need to immediately see Jalen take a monstrous step over these next 6 games, or even in the first 5 or 6 games next year? Because like I mentioned with some of those other guys, it wasn't even year 2 or year 3 that they really came to be who they were. So we'll see if the organization has that kind of plan in mind. That's something that none of us can answer. And sometimes I laugh at the sports talk shows. Is Jalen Hurts a franchise quarterback? And then the callers call in and they yell at each other and debate it. And I sit there and I'm thinking, you fools, it doesn't matter what you guys think. It really doesn't matter what any of us thinks. It matters what the organization thinks. And to be honest with you, I think that they're a very unpredictable organization now with how they approach the quarterback position. And they tell you that. They tell you that they view the quarterback position differently. They're the only team I've ever seen draft a backup quarterback in the second round, while they had another quarterback under contract the way they did. So who's to say they don't see a different model? Hey, why do we want to pay Jalen Hurts $40 million at the end of next year when we think we can do this again with another second-round pick? I have no idea. It's so hard to predict what the organization's going to do and how much Jalen's going to develop from now until the end of the year, until the middle of next year.
Well, I'll say this before I pass it to you, Adam.
Okay.
There's a lot of people, and everybody knows where Howie was last week and what he was doing with his binoculars and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this to you, though. If you go and you draft a quarterback, and I don't see any of those top 5 guys really being that much better than Jalen Hurts going into next season. The problem is, if you make the decision that you're going to draft another quarterback and he's going to be your guy, then everything that you started this year and everything that you did this year, you're going to do it all over again next year with a first-year quarterback. Okay, that's what it's going to look like. Everything that you've put together, in my opinion. That's why I'm kind of in favor of I'm one of those people that believe that Jalen can be the guy, that they should give him at least another year, no matter what that looks like. Listen, he's a leader. The other guys believe in him. Unless, Sirianni is blowing smoke, he loves the guy. But at the end of the day, these things go in stages, So if you decide to move on and you decide to draft the quarterback of the future next year in the first round and create the same upheaval that got you in the situation that you're in now, you run the risk of starting all over again. And lastly, I was watching the game last night, and the commentators were talking about how quarterbacks miss people, miss guys that are wide open. You see it every time. The point that I wanted to make, because I was talking to the guys that I was with last night about this very thing, I said, when a quarterback drops back, his progression is either from left to right or right to left. That's the way it is, okay? If he drops back and his progression is right to left, and he's got time for 2 reads, and we're looking at what's going on the left side, the side that he can never get back to because of protection or whatever the situation is, that happens. Those guys are going to be open over here. That's just the way that it works. Sometimes quarterbacks miss wide open wide receivers because they are opposite of the actual progression and how it works. Okay, I wanted to throw that out there because I was having this massive debate, and we're talking quarterback. I was having this massive debate with a guy the other day, and I also saw that someone posted, "Oh, Jalen, he just missed too many wide open guys. This guy just wide open over here." Well, hell, his progression started over here, and he certainly didn't have enough time to get back. Let's look at this thing from the proper perspective, Adam.
Yeah. So what I would add is this, and you touched on it in passing. Something that we've heard, I really haven't talked about this much on our show, but I'll just say this. I've heard from agents who have players on the Eagles. I actually heard this last year. I talked to some of the coaches who worked for the Eagles in the past, particularly last season, because they were with Hurts last year. You mentioned the leadership thing. The players bought into Hurts really on in terms of his mindset, how much he cares and his leadership. And that's really important, because if he's going to be your starting quarterback, and he could be in the future, we don't know that. The next 7 games of potentially the playoffs will go a long way to writing that story. But you want that, Seth, as you played, 50% of a guy being your quarterback is his leadership and all the intangibles. He's got all that. He's got the great family background. You love all that about him. That is very important if the Eagles go forward with him next year, because if you go forward with him next year, he's got a real chance to be the guy for many, many years to come. He's got to be able to be the guy this year for them to bring him back. That's been the story of this season, is he had to talk about leadership, not and putting the distractions around you away. He's been able to mature as a quarterback, knowing that the Eagles were going after Deshaun Watson. It's not a secret. My mom knows this. Okay, everybody knows this. Despite all that, he was drafted as a backup quarterback, which is true. Geoff Mosher's 100% correct. It's 1,000% true. That doesn't matter anymore. The fact is, he's their starting quarterback for this season. They're not benching him. And he's getting better, as you said. And as a matter of fact, I want to go back to the Denver game very quickly. Not only was that his best game this season, last year against Arizona, he made more spectacular throws. This game, he looked like a seasoned veteran, where he'd been playing 3 or 4 years, the Denver game. One person who graded the Eagles tape last week told me he'd never seen him make so many throws from a muddied pocket. That's super important in today's NFL. This is not college football. You're not going to get the same room. And he's not 6'4". He's only 6'1". So he's made a jump. I can't say I'm a believer or not. I'm a guy who I don't overreact. I'll tell you what I see over a series of 2 or 3 years. Carson Wentz, I saw it very early, and then I saw it in the second year. I'm like, okay, this kid's got some special ability. Let's see what happens. Then he got hurt, and then we know what's happened over a series of years in his relationship with the team. That stuff's hard to predict, but I don't worry about that stuff with this guy. I just worry about I would be concerned about what's the ceiling and can he get there. We're not going to know that until we get through at least these next 7 games, potentially the playoffs.
Adam, I know you got to go, but before you go, I'm going to throw this question to both
Sure.
of you guys. And Adam, you can answer it first, and then Jeff. If you get to February, late March, and there's still a market for Deshaun Watson or a disgruntled
Russell Wilson, maybe, or Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Russell Wilson. A situation where, Pete Carroll steps away and says, hey, I'm done. Russell goes in to the owner and says, hey, I'm out. What do you do with those 3 draft picks? If these opportunities are sitting in front of you? I've got my opinions. Okay. I'm just curious. I'm curious what the experts say.
Yeah, so I would say this. Well, first of all, if Pete Carroll leaves, I think Russell Wilson will want to stay. In my reporting last year, I could just tell you Russell was completely at odds with Pete Carroll and his insistence on micromanaging the offense. I could talk 2 hours about the issues that Russell Wilson had with their offense last year and Pete Carroll, and I know they get along now.
So
I don't know.
It sounds like we lost his sound there. I will just tell you while we get Adam's sound back. It's so difficult to answer because my opinion doesn't matter, right? I mean, I could sit here and say I would give this guy a shot, and I don't know but I also know the Eagles are infatuated with a certain style of offense. They want the big play quarterback. They want and it's hard to even imagine this, but I can see them thinking this. Like if they win 8 games this year with Jalen Hurts playing the same way, I can almost see them thinking, man, if that were Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson, we would have won 11 games. So I'm not sure Jalen's, by no fault of his own, can do anything other than just do his thing and see if the organization can pledge allegiance to him or if they just feel like there's always going to be a better option.
Well, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the draft picks, the salary cap money, all of the things that come along with it. Adam, I don't know if you can hear me.
I can.
Okay, there you go. So my issue is you're trying to get younger as an organization. Okay, you were money strapped going into last year. You had to make a lot of decisions as to what the team was going to look like and where you were actually going coming into this year. Okay. So going into next year, Howie's done a masterful job of maneuvering and acquiring some great draft assets next year. I think they have upwards of 10 with 3 in the first round. However that falls out or shakes out, that's yet to be determined. And you're going to have a great amount of cap space. Okay. So now if you make the trade, it's going to cost you at minimum two of those first round picks at minimum. Okay. And then you're going to go from a quarterback who's still on his rookie deal to a quarterback that's making $35-40 million. That's going to eat up a significant amount of your space. For me, there's no way in hell that I'm going after either one of those guys at that cost. That costs too much to the future of the actual team. Now, if the team was built and ready to go to the Super Bowl and win right now, I would say absolutely take the Rams approach. But where the Eagles are right now, there's no way that you can spend those assets on either one of those quarterbacks and assume that kind of cap liability moving forward and still build a younger team.
I assume my sound's on. Yeah, I think you have to look at like this. So if you're going to give up those kind of draft assets, what kind of team you're going to have left? If you get let's say they trade for Russell Wilson, right? I don't know why I'm hearing myself twice, but that's story. But if you're going to give up all those draft assets, you have to ask yourself, how good is your football team going to be when you give everything up? Because by the time you rebuild this team, Russell Wilson will be 36. So it's I hear you. It's a catch-22. But I'm just going to go back to what Geoff asked me in the spring. How will they know where they're at with Jalen Hurts? The tape will tell you. 75% of it's the coaching tape. They'll know no matter what their record is. The tape is going to tell the story. And if he continues to progress, I'm not going to be so worried if they're 7-10. If he plays well, the tape's going to tell you that.
Geoff, your thoughts on one Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson? Oh, now your audio's out.
Sorry about that. I had
all
muted
good.
myself. I'm sorry. So I think you guys make great points. I think it's valid to say that if you give up all these great assets for a quarterback, what you've done is strengthen one position, but weaken the ability to build your team. Depends on how much you think the quarterback himself can mask some of the deficiencies that you have on your team. The Seattle Seahawks, to me, have not been a great overall roster for the last few years, but they're always in the playoffs because Russell Wilson's done a great job of masquerading that by his play. Deshaun Watson somehow was one of the best quarterbacks last year on a bad team, which you don't normally see. Normally, it's very rare to see a team win 4 games and the quarterback have a passer rating in the top 3. So that's a testament to his ability to play at a high level when the team around him is not matching that level.
Right.
And that'll obviously be things that Jeffrey and Howie and the Brain Trust think about in the offseason. I don't think they want to have to do that. I think they would love to, at the end of the year, say, we've seen enough from Jalen Hurts. The problem is, I think no matter what, a year is just too soon. When you evaluate a quarterback after a year, and Adam's right, the tape will tell you what you've seen from him in a year. What it won't tell you, though, is what he'll be at the end of the next year and the year after. He could be much better. He could have just reached the ceiling. The tape can't tell you that. That's a projection. A projection involves bias. It involves subjectivity. And that's an area where you got the fork in the road and you go one way or the other way, and you never know if you're making the right decision. I mean, that's draft picks altogether, right? You draft a guy in the first round, think he's going to be great. He either is or isn't. Sometimes he isn't. And that's just kind of the conundrum I would say the Eagles are in.
Do you really think that they don't want to make that move? I think Howie enjoys the art of the deal. I think he loves to make these splash moves and these moves that really impress. I don't get the sense that you didn't get the sense going into the season because of how long they took to actually name Jalen Hurts a starter. That they really want him to be the guy. There's some things that when you think about what Jeffrey has said and what their mantra is and how Howie Roseman, he's been reared by Joe Banner, so to speak. And him and I, we go head to head all the time. Joe's thing is you pass the ball early and often, you get a lead, then you run it late. And every time I'm like, Joe, what happens when you go 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out? Okay. What happens when your team is down? You just keep throwing it all game, even though, your quarterback is suffering. What's the point of having a running game and an offensive line that can and is willing to block if you're not going to run the ball?
Mm-hmm.
But I just feel like I don't get the sense that that's really what they want to do. I think Howie wants to make a splash deal.
Well, when I say what they want, I should have couched that and said I think that they would love to see over this next 6 or 7 games here or whatever it's going to be. I would think they would love to see Jalen Hurts make that kind of progression to show that his passing acumen is on par with his running acumen and that he can be a great quarterback like a Deshaun Watson or a Russell Wilson. Because if he can be, even if he shows that he's not there yet but has that potential more though than he's showing now, that's still a pat on the back, right? You draft a quarterback in the second round where the odds of hitting on that guy are like 20%. I mean, you go look at the quarterbacks drafted in the second round over the last 10 years, other than Colin Kaepernick and Derek Carr and trying to think of a few other, Colin may be the only one that's actually gone to a Super Bowl. They're just not, there's a lot more Geno Smiths in there and guys who failed, Deshaun Keisers, and there are really good success stories. So I think that they would love to be the organization that said, hey, we drafted this kid in the second round and he developed into one of the best in the league and we figured it out, because that's a nice pat on the back. And then they get to use their first round picks to help that quarterback out in that program. But we're obviously 6 or 7 or more weeks away from answering that. But I think ideally that's what they would love. They would love to see that. If they don't see that, then I definitely with you that they will look to make a big splash because that's what they want.
Adam, I know you got to run, so I'm going to give you the last word before you go on this whole Jalen Hurts dilemma and whether you feel that they want him to succeed or whether, Howard would rather make, some big splash deal.
Well, Seth, I think the story is that they did not know or weren't sure about Jalen Hurts. If they were, they would not have gone or been involved with Deshaun Watson. But now you see the progression that Hurts has made over the last 3 games. I mean this is actually a sign of respect. This is what coaches will tell you when things are going well for young players. He leaves you wanting to see more. You want to see more of him. You don't want to see less of him. I want to see him. You don't need to throw the ball 40 times, but you were kind of alluding to it. I want to see some more diversity in the pass game. The run game is terrific right now. They're doing a lot of different things. We don't have time to go into it. The run game is unbelievable. We didn't have time here to talk about the offensive line, which is just I haven't seen anything like this really in this market in my lifetime watching the Eagles. This line is ridiculous. Their 2017 line was really good. This one's even better, if you could believe that. And they're down 2 starters, but they would love Jalen Hurts. I think I agree with Geoff. They're not going in and saying, okay, we want Jalen Hurts to fail because that way we could use 3 draft picks or 2 draft picks to go trade for quarterback. They want him to be the guy. They love him to be the guy because they love to spend these picks on so many weaknesses that they have. Secondary, they have a real bad problem at outside corner for the future. They don't know who their outside corner is going to be in the future. They need 2 safeties. They need 2 defensive ends. They need 1 to 2 defensive tackles. So they need a lot. They need a lot of help here for the future, and we'll see what happens. But no, they love nothing better for him to be successful. But I get your point. You'd have to ask yourself, well, why were they trying to get Deshaun Watson? How much confidence could they possibly have? Remember, folks, they were in on Deshaun Watson after Wentz was traded back in March. So this is not a new revelation.
Adam, listen, man, I know you got to run. Thank you for your time. As always,
Got it,
man. Great
we'll
stuff.
do it again.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Take care, my friend.
Later.
All right. Well, Geoff, it's you and me. Let's jump over on the other side of the football for the last 20 minutes here because, you know, what we see out of Jonathan Gannon is certainly not what we're used to, you know, in the city of brotherly love. When you go all the way back to Marion Campbell, you fast forward to, you know, Buddy Ryan and you know, Dick Vermeil and, you know, his aggressive attitude to Bud Carson, who I played for, and, you know, Jim Johnson, you know, even to a certain degree, maybe 15 to 16%, Jim Schwartz. But we don't see that out of, you know, Jonathan Gannon. I think he was forced to do so last week, which in a lot of ways I believe made him extremely uncomfortable. You know, the issues that they've had is that Jonathan has been comfortable coming out after less than quarterbacks and teams that don't necessarily really have a whole lot of, you know, wide receiver talent. He's been a lot less apt to do that against the more elite level tight ends, well, quarterbacks, I should say, and the elite level wide receivers. I just think it's a mindset. I think that sometimes, you know, your players, you look at Darius Slay and how much more aggressive he plays. You look at the linebackers and look how much better they've played. You look at Harris and I see him making tackles all over the field. I think that when you create a aggressive mentality, an aggressive environment, I think that the players play much, much more aggressive. And the only way that you can create turnovers is by playing more aggressively. 3 turnovers last week. Obviously, you know, I believe that when you put your guys up and tell them, hey, challenge, you know, your opponent, then now you're putting yourself in a position to make some good things happen. But when you play so much passive defense like this, especially like they did in the second half, it was disappointing to have a guy like Trevor Siemian his head was spinning in the first half. And in the second half, you let him get comfortable in the pocket. I can remember there were the first 2 third downs, he came with a blitz, okay, and off the field. The third time they didn't come, he scrambled around and converted, you know, a 3rd down play on the goal line, okay, 3rd and goal for a touchdown. And I'm pulling, and you can tell I ain't got no hair at all, but I'm pulling it out, asking myself, if you've been successful on other 3rd downs and you know you got this guy shell shocked, why give him anything whatsoever? Anything to make him feel like he can put something together and do something that can help his team get back into it. That just drove me insane.
I think you've seen this twice now in the last 3 weeks. When Darius Slay leaves the game, Seth, he backs off big time. He's scared of his personnel. He won't say that. I think it's fairly obvious. I think to a degree you can understand because there's a really big drop off when Slay goes off the field and the rookie Zach McPherson has to come on and Steven Nelson has to kind of be your top cornerback. But, I've been told by many people that sometimes your cornerbacks, when a struggling cornerback's best friend is a pass rush or a shaky quarterback. And to your point,
Yeah.
the quarterback was shook. He was shook all first half, and they did back off. And I do think that hurt them. And I think what Jonathan Gannon is struggling is, and not a lot of coaches do this, so I'm not going to put this all on John, but I mean, coaches are stubborn people by nature. They believe in what they believe, and if it doesn't work, they don't want to abandon what they believe to be as true. In fact, you've heard Nick Sirianni say this a couple of times. You double down on what you believe to be as true. This guy's core philosophy is to not give up big plays. And you can obviously tell that when he doesn't have Slay, he's really afraid of forcing the issue because he thinks he's going to give up big plays. And if you go watch the Eagles defense last year and the year before, they used to give up quite a lot of big plays and they don't as much anymore. But he's got to your point, find that right balance. We know the personnel on the back end outside of Slay is not very good, but when quarterbacks complete 80% against you, you're not doing anything better to rectify the situation. Clearly the first half was different. You saw, and he's been playing more cover one for the last few weeks now. He's been mixing in more blitzes for the last few weeks. Finally got the cornerbacks, whether it's them on their own or him saying it, to play up on the receivers a little bit. It felt like the missing piece coming along. But I tend to think that we are not going to see a whole much more deviation from Jonathan Gannon in these situations. And we'll probably be complaining about this the next time the Eagles play, even when they play Tyler Heineke, who's not a great quarterback, but he's a gnat. I mean, he keeps plays alive. He knows how to look downfield when he gets out of the pocket. I have a feeling that they're going to go back to that kind of a style. And if Darius Slay, who's in the concussion protocol, does not play this weekend or Sunday against the Giants, I have a feeling we'll be talking about another kind of timid approach to the game plan. I hope not, Seth, but I'm just going off the evidence.
Geoff, I get it. My thing is, how do you keep a guy on your roster that you're not sure of? See, for me, that's problematic, okay? Because as a coach, it's my job. If I'm a coach, it's my job to get my guy prepared and get him ready. It's his job to prove to me that he's trustworthy enough that I can put him in tight situations, that he's going to compete and he's going to give everything that he's got. If you lose one guy off your entire defense and that changes your entire mentality, then guess what? You don't have the personnel that you thought you should have had. And that means you made some mistakes going into this season, either A, bringing in good enough talent, or B, getting that guy coached up, or C, realizing that guy can't do what it is that you need him to do. Because in every game, there's 3 or 4, in my position, 3 or 4 different critical moments where you can create pressure and speed up a quarterback's clock. Now I thought that Nick Sirianni, pretty much showed us all that he had. And then he comes out last week, with the double corner blitz, Then he comes back, in the second, third down, and he walks the linebacker up. He's got Hargrave, in a 2-eye, and the center has the audacity to turn away from him, and he turns the linebacker free. I'm just, so I know it's there, okay? But you can't tell me that you have this passive mentality 85, 90% of the time, not understanding that, it's pressure is every quarterback's kryptonite. I don't care whether you're talking about Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or Joe Montana. I don't care who it is, okay? When you can put pressure on the quarterback and you can put hits on the quarterback, it changes everything, because now the quarterback is wondering, where is he coming from? Where's the pressure coming from? He gets hit. And especially today, these guys are so unfamiliar with being hit that you hit them one time and they kind of get shell-shocked. How do you create, in third and long situations, why would you just give up 12, 13, 14 yards just for the sake of the blitz, when you can force, that's the time where you force turnovers. That's the time where you take away field position with a sack, a 6, 7, 8 yard sack that gets you that many more yards of field position, even when you force them to punt. You can't play scared, man. This game is not for the faint of heart, and it's certainly not for a coach who's faint of heart and scared to get beat deep. Sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose, but you got to empower your players to go out there and play. And that one player can't be Darius Slay. You got to empower these linebackers to blitz and to cover and hope that they turn the corner and they get it. But you as a coach cannot protect your players. You can't do it. It will get you beat.
Yeah, I think they've got a bad marriage here. Not I don't mean for the long term. I just mean conceptually a bad marriage of a defensive coordinator who's scared of his personnel, and an organization who gave him a little bit too much of a reason to be scared of the personnel. You're right that you can't let one player dictate your entire philosophy. Unfortunately, he's in that position that he really only has one player in the back end that he feels that comfortable with to do certain things with his pressure schemes. And the reason why he feels that way, Seth, is, and all I have to do is mention names. I'll go mention names. Sidney Jones, Rasul Douglas, Byron Maxwell, Kerry Williams, Bradley Fletcher, Trevard Lindley. We can keep going, right? I mean, like how many years upon years upon years upon years has this organization failed to draft and develop or even acquire, until Darius Slay, a cornerback who could give you the type of luxury where you feel like, all right, I can lock this guy one-on-one. Maddox is nice. He's a slot corner. That's a little bit different. Same thing with Brandon Boykin for a few years. But by and large, the organization has failed because they have not drafted well. And I don't think they obviously haven't hit on good free agent signings. Obviously there's Darius Slay, there's Asante, and then there's really not much beyond that. There's a lot more failures. There's a lot more misses and hits, to the point where, a guy like Steven Nelson was a good acquisition, but you will go back to that Broncos game and you'll see he was getting beat. I mean, he was getting beat by Sutton, getting beat by Patrick, and Bridgewater just didn't have the opportunity. To your point, Bridgewater was shook, so he didn't have the ability to get him the ball. Right. But Gannon went back and watched it tape and saw, man, we were close on that one. And then that's the bad marriage of him being skittish, thinking the next time around I might not be that lucky. The next time around, that quarterback might have that one extra second to get that ball to this guy. And I agree with you. It's an uneasy relationship right now between the coordinator and his personnel. So hopefully, if they do a better job of putting better personnel for him, then he will want to tile up that pressure more. But I also agree with your concept that as a coach, you are a leader, you are a teacher, and you are someone who's tasked with putting the confidence in your players to tell them, I believe you can do this. Did Bill Belichick do that with Malcolm Butler, and he ends up making the play of the game in the Super Bowl at the 2-yard line, right? I mean, you've got to be able to have that confidence, and that's why you practice Monday through Saturday, and you rep, and you get guys in there. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure this week won't be any different. Let's jump over on the Giants before, I'll let you get out of here. The Giants are in disarray. The Eagles have got the Giants this week and the Jets next week, and back-to-back trips up to the Meadowlands. The Giants today fired Jason Garrett, their offensive coordinator. And once you start seeing position coaches go, a lot of times that's an indication that the head coach, isn't that far from following him right out the door. This is a great opportunity for the Philadelphia Eagles, to go up here and dominate this game. But there's, obviously there's always things that just scare you to death. You watched that game last night, and the Giants don't look like they can beat anybody. They get a gift on a muffed punt or interception, I should say. That's the only 7 points that they put on the board. You look at Daniel Jones, and he looks just as shell-shocked as he could, as he's ever been. If there's ever a time to come after a quarterback next week is the time, because if he sits back, we've seen what Danny can do. He can get hot and he can sling it. He can start scrambling. He can do a lot of different things. But why give him the opportunity to even find that kind of confidence from jump one. You
Right.
know that you got to get Saquon under control. So on first and second downs, I don't give a crap. I'm coming with run blitzes that we're going to play, the run game on the way to the quarterback. The intent is to speed up Daniel Jones's clock. The intent is to pressure him. The intent is for him to have that bewildered look that he had on his face when he turned around and threw that ball, in your words, to the fat guy last night, and for him to throw it to some of our fat guys next week. Give me your assessment. The guy that really scares me the most on the Giants, by the way, is that Kadarius Toney kid.
He is.
He is. Whew,
He's got moves.
Special.
He's pretty slick.
Special.
Yeah, he is special. He got a little banged up in that game, so we'll see if he plays. I honestly think the firing of Jason Garrett, it's not great if you're an Eagle fan, I think, because, fresh perspective, different ideas. The old ideas were not working. There was a play in that game where the Giants tried to run a crossing route, and the left receiver, the right receiver ran into each other, okay? Like, you would have thought the coordinator was a first-year coordinator and he didn't know what he was doing. I mean, Jason Garrett's been a head coach forever, and we know that. They were in just complete disarray. Their offensive line's not good, but sometimes I think that it's probably not as bad as it is. It's just that they are so dysfunctional offensively that it just looks worse. They have weapons, Seth, right? I mean, we know Saquon Barkley is a weapon. Their backup running back's been playing all right. Booker is all right. Evan Ingram is fast. I mean, he almost caught a ball last year against the Eagles that would have won that game for them instead of losing it for him. Kadarius Toney. Shepard's been out, but I don't know if he's going to come back. They've got speed on the outside. Slayton's hurt them before. They have enough weapons to hurt the Eagles where the Eagles can be hurt. You can run the ball on them still. Denver ran the ball on them well. They just fumbled and then could not put the ball down the field, right? So they have the components, and I wonder about what Freddie Kitchens and this new offense will look like and how they'll try to capitalize on that and maybe spread out a little bit more. And I do wonder if Jonathan Gannon, who felt very free in releasing the hounds against a team that didn't have its Pro Bowl running back, didn't have its two offensive tackles who are good players, and didn't have a whole lot of known weapons out there, if he will be different against a team that does have weapons, just hasn't put it all together. I think it's a fascinating study into seeing where his mindset is going to be. But you know this more than anyone. A division game is different, and the Giants are a laughing stock because of that game. But 2 weeks ago, they went into the bye. They beat the Raiders. Like, they have enough talent to win some games if they don't fall all over themselves. And then when they make a coaching move like that, everybody's sonar or radar gets up a little bit more. So I don't think it's just – I don't think the Eagles have reached a point yet where you just look at the team and you say, yeah, that's a win. And I think a division game is always a game where it can be a coin flip.
Well, I can tell you this, whether you're in Atlantic City or Las Vegas, whether you're playing a football game, a basketball game, a baseball game, scared money does not win.
That's right.
And I just think that Jonathan Gannon has got to get himself in the mindset that in a much more aggressive mindset. That's going to help him. It's going to help the players. I think it even helps the cornerbacks, man, because, at the end of the day, the shorter time that they have to cover, the less pre-snap reads you can give these quarterbacks today, the more apt you are, to have success. But playing zone, sitting back and letting these guys take you apart is not where it is. Hey, Geoff, I want to thank you, man. I tell my guests every week, our time is our most valuable commodity. I appreciate the last hour you hanging with us, you and Adam. I look forward to being on with you guys in a couple of weeks. And,
Awesome.
I appreciate you, man. All right.
Seth, it's always been a pleasure. I'm really happy that you had us on. I really appreciate it. And it's always good spending time with you.
You got it, my man. All right, peeps. That's it for this week's show. As always, be good to each other and take care of each other. But most important, make sure you love each other. I'll see you guys right back here next week on the Seth Joyner Show. Peace.